Good morning. Here's your Intel report for Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. Geostrategic Intelligence Summary. Russia-NATO Situation Report. NATO promises more aid for Ukraine, membership in NATO. On Tuesday, NATO allies promised to send more aid money and weapons to Ukraine following Russian missile and drone strikes across the country. The strikes reportedly knocked out power and heat to most Ukraine's citizens. AP reported that foreign ministers from the NATO alliance, including U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, began a two-day meeting in Bucharest with NATO leaders saying, Russia cannot stop the alliance's expansion. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said regarding Ukraine, NATO's door is open. Speaking to reporters, Ukraine's foreign minister said his country desperately needed Patriot air defense weapons and transformers. Giving Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine may be a bridge too far, and restarting a Ukraine-NATO bid will likely end any chance of a negotiated peace. Ukrainian NATO membership was the red line for Russia that resulted in its invasion of Ukraine. Reattempting a Ukrainian NATO bid demonstrates the unseriousness of the liberal rules-based order to seek a peaceful exit from the conflict. Expect the war to continue along its path of a wider conflict in Europe as NATO members inch ever closer to active belligerent status. Norway to halt oil and gas exploration. Norway, Europe's largest natural gas supplier, announced it would halt oil and gas exploration in untapped areas of its extensive oil and gas fields. The moratorium on exploration will last at least through the current parliament, which ends in 2025. The decision was first reported by Norwegian public broadcaster NRK and confirmed by Norway's Minister of Petroleum and Energy, Terje Aasland, on Tuesday. According to Aasland, the decision was part of a minority government budget deal with the opposition Socialist Left Party, SV, to fight climate change. Aasland said the government could still issue licenses to drill for oil and gas in mature areas where oil and gas extraction is already taking place. The compromise deal is aimed at eventually halting Norway's fossil fuel extraction operations. Although the current ruling party denies that is the case, the SV party leader announced that the deal marked a new course in the country's energy policy through the limitation on oil exploration. Without Russian gas and with new limits on Norwegian oil and gas extraction, Europe's economy could face long-term viability issues if it sticks with its drive to green energy. Latin America Situation Report. Mexico and U.S. now in fight over genetically modified corn. U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack wrote a strongly worded letter to Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, on Tuesday saying that time was running out for Mexico to rescind its ban on genetically modified, GM, corn for human consumption. AMLO responded by saying he wouldn't back down, and Mexico was currently studying whether to eventually ban GM corn for use in animal feed. The Mexican leader cited a need to protect human health and native strains of Mexican corn from genetic contamination. AG Secretary Vilsack stated in his letter that this Mexican GM corn ban is a critically important issue for U.S. farmers who are rightfully and deeply concerned about the decree. Mexico imports about $3 billion worth of U.S. yellow corn annually, which is used mainly for animal feed. It relies almost entirely on domestically produced white corn for human consumption. China and Indo-Pacific Situation Report. China cancels school, police begin crackdown across major urban areas. Chinese universities canceled school and sent students home on Tuesday following this weekend's COVID unrest. Police patrols were out in force in Beijing, Shanghai, and other large mainland cities. Tuesday evening in the city of Guangzhou, protesters clashed with security forces clad in white hazmat suits. Police were observed stopping pedestrians, inspecting their phones, and deleting videos and social media posts of civil unrest. There were no official reports of detentions by security forces, although the AP reported that journalists witnessed several people being detained and taken away. China's health authorities are slightly easing COVID restrictions to calm tensions and restore order in the major urban areas. Expect security forces to quietly detain and remove individuals thought to have participated in the weekend protests. Barring any overt violence by security forces, China will likely return to its pre-protest status quo by the end of the week. China on track to field 1,500 nuke warheads by 2035. According to a Pentagon report released on Tuesday, China will have a stockpile of over 1,500 nuclear warheads by 2035. Pentagon officials were flummoxed by the news, with one anonymous defense official saying, "It does raise questions about whether they're kind of shifting away from a strategy that was premised on a lean and effective deterrent." The report, which mainly addressed China's military activities throughout 2021, said China currently has a nuclear stockpile of 400 warheads. China recently unveiled its newest Jing-class submarines equipped with JL-3 intercontinental ballistic missiles. The JL-3s can reach any part of the United States when fired from China's territorial waters in the South China Sea. Admiral Chaz Richards, commander of U.S. Strategic Command, briefed Congress earlier this year, stating that China had achieved a nuclear breakout and was no longer a regional nuclear power. He stressed that China now had a fully developed nuclear triad capable of global deterrence. U.S. Defense Situation Report. B-21, a breakthrough in stealth and development tech. The Air Force is unveiling its B-21 stealth bomber this week. The B-21 was reportedly designed to have even greater stealth capabilities than the F-35, carry conventional and nuclear payloads, and fly without a pilot if needed. Its maiden flight is scheduled for this Friday. Using new digital development technology, this aircraft was able to move from concept to flight in just 7 years. Defense industry officials expect this new technology to dramatically cut development costs and time for all future projects. The existence of the project has not been classified, but the concepts and look of the aircraft have been to prevent enemy nations from developing a means to counter it. Suddenly unveiling it when the Pentagon is still on a 2027 timeline for a potential armed conflict suggests they believe the enemies cannot counter it in the next 5 years or that they expect to use the bomber far sooner. Additionally, a pilotless nuclear-capable stealth bomber presents a significant threat to all adversaries and may cause them to ensure this capability does not become widespread. Navy Research Lab Quantum Tech Research, the Navy Research Lab, NRL, is conducting experiments with quantum sensors, computing, networking, and navigation. The stated intent is to create a ship that can predict corrosion patterns, navigate without GPS, develop hyperaccurate situational awareness, and eventually connect to all other sensors and weapons belonging to the Pentagon. This is likely a step toward developing a carrier strike group that can fight without sailors. The personnel and computers on board already cover most of these functions. The only way it makes sense for quantum computing to be installed is if there is a hidden intent to make the ships capable of fighting effectively without user input. Inside the Beltway. White House. President Biden is scheduled to deliver remarks at the White House Tribal Nations Summit and the lighting of the national Christmas tree. Congress. The House is scheduled to consider House Joint Resolution 100 to resolve the current rail labor dispute and concurrent Resolution 119 to provide paid sick leave for rail workers. The House Foreign Affairs Committee is scheduled to hold a hearing on Russian filtration operations in Ukraine. State. Secretary Blinken is scheduled to meet Ukrainian Foreign Minister DMYTRO Kuleba and continue the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting in Bucharest, Romania. DOJ. An Alabama man was indicted for violating U.S. sanctions against Iran by conspiring to export U.S. origin parts used in the oil and gas industry to customers in Iran. Domestic Intelligence Summary. Congress is moving to avert a potential rail strike on December 9th. Lawmakers are signaling that legislation to intervene will pass quickly, but railroads are expected to start preparations for a strike a week before the December 9th deadline. A strike will have a significant impact on the U.S. economy, pushing prices for energy and food higher in the near term. In the event of a strike, replacing rail shipping with trucking would require about 500,000 additional trucks on the road per day. This will become more difficult as smaller trucking companies like Mid-Continent Trucking are driven out of business due to high costs and low trucking spot prices. Biden urges Congress to avert rail strike. Congress will take up resolution. At a meeting with lawmakers Tuesday, President Biden urged Congress to quickly pass legislation to avert a rail strike. House Speaker Pelosi, Democrat California, said the House will consider the resolution today. Pelosi said the resolution has the votes to pass, and Senate Majority Leader Schumer, Democrat New York, said that Minority Leader McConnell, Republican Kentucky, agreed to try and pass the bill as quickly as possible. Logistics company C.H. Robinson Worldwide VP Tim Humbert said that rail shippers are preparing for a worst-case scenario, with some already choosing to divert away from rail shipping. Rice industry requests USDA assistance, food prices to increase in 2023. Industry group USA Rice requested $400 million in assistance from the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. USA Rice Chair and farmer Kirk Satterfield said rice farmers in southern states are being impacted by both rising input prices and artificially low market prices manipulated by global actors. A study released by the Agricultural and Food Policy Center at Texas A&M University showed a $442 per acre loss in net income for rice farms from 2021 to 2022, and 1/3 of rice farms are expected to post a loss this year. A new USDA food price report said that all food prices in October increased 10.9% over the same month in 2021. According to the USDA report, food prices next year are expected to increase at a rate above historical averages. BLM proposes mandate on methane leaks. A proposed rule advanced by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, is aimed at stifling methane releases from oil and gas wells on public land. A similar rule imposed during the Obama administration was tossed by a federal court. The new rule is bolstered by the Inflation Reduction Act, which requires companies to pay royalties on all gas that is extracted, even if deliberately vented or burned off. The rule will require energy companies to spend an estimated $121.9 million annually to upgrade equipment and detect leaks. Brainerd, supply shocks increase inflation risk. Federal Reserve Vice Chair Lael Brainerd said that a protracted series of supply shocks could risk pushing inflation higher and require monetary policy to tighten further. According to Brainerd, inelastic supply is a distinguishing factor between post-pandemic economic recovery and the preceding 30 years. Iowa Trucking Company shuts down. Mid-Continent Trucking of Denison, Iowa, has shut down after 24 years in operation. The owners cited worsening economic conditions and decreasing trucking rates as the cause for the company closing its doors. Hurricane season, nothing significant to report. End report.